Like, why do they get to do that? And why should the rest of us listen to them? Right? So we have 535 people in Washington who are making up rules for everybody else. And then everyone acts like they have to do what those people say. Why? And if I decide to make up rules for everybody else doesn't obey me. And if I decide I'm going to enforce my rules, i.e., I hire people with guns to go around like threatening people to make them do what I say, and then like once in a while I like have somebody kidnapped because they didn't do what I said, and then I lock them in a cage somewhere, like people are going to think that I'm crazy and possibly evil, and then it would be a horrible crime. But that's what the government is doing. Okay, so why do they get to do that? And my answer to this fundamentally is, well, there is no good reason. Actually, they don't have the right to do that. They don't have any special rights that the rest of us don't have, right? And now, I want to sort of qualify that. So I think that it is okay for someone to use force in order to protect people's rights. So if you're aware of somebody who is violating other people's rights, you can use force to stop them. And you don't need to be a special person to do that. If you see somebody committing a crime, like you or I could stop that person by force, I think. And so I also think the government could do that. That would be okay, right? But there are some things that you and I couldn't do. We wouldn't be justified in exercising force against other people. And I think also the government shouldn't do those things either, because I think they're not special. They should be subject to the same moral constraints as the rest of us.
Yeah, right. What's the difference between philosophical anarchism and political anarchism?
Yeah, so these are technical terms in political philosophy. These things are not well named. Okay. But anyway, philosophical anarchism is the view that nobody has an obligation to obey the law merely because it is the law. Okay. But that's compatible with your having an obligation to obey the law, right? Because the second part of it was merely because it's the law. Okay, so if the law says don't murder, you still have an obligation to not murder anyone. But the reason you shouldn't murder anyone isn't that it's the law, right? You shouldn't murder people because, life is valuable, people have rights, whatever, something like that. Not because the law says you shouldn't murder them. Okay. So the philosophical anarchists they could agree with the content of most of the laws, but if there's a law that doesn't correspond to independently existing moral constraints, then you don't have to follow it.